Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video and myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. This is Ukraine War News Update, third part. There are a lot going on today for the 9th of March 2024. There's a lot going on just over there, which is the Italy-Scotland Six Nations rugby match, which is 21-22 at the moment, and it's a super good game. Go Italy. Let's go to start with Volodymyr Zelensky visiting Turkey yesterday, and we heard about this in a previous video with regard to two corvettes that Turkey are building, two ships for Ukraine, which is an incredible thing to be happening in the background I wasn't aware of previously. Quote, "We are interested in strengthening bilateral cooperation and joint production with Turkish defence companies." And Turkey, an interesting country for all sorts of reasons. They kind of straddle north, south, east and west, a bit like Ukraine does in many respects, but Turkey is kind of on the edge of Europe and on the edge of the Middle East in a way that's important for NATO. Is interesting in the European context in the EU and wanting to be part of the EU, or at least that seems to have died down a little bit, but an important member of NATO because of that positioning and controlling the Bosphorus Straits, which therefore kind of controls access to the Black Sea, particularly at times of war with the Montreux Convention. Turkey are a massively important country, and although people get annoyed, and I get annoyed with Turkey's positioning, straddling the fence and talking out both sides of their mouth, actually I think it's important that they still do support Ukraine quite overtly at the moment, more than they support Russia, even though they're laundering money. They're kind of like making the most out of being friendly with Russia and doing trade with them, while still actually towing the party line to a large degree with Ukraine and NATO. And for example, there are claims that they are not accepting hydrocarbons from Russia due to sanctions at the moment, like India, and that is very important. There's probably a lot of pressure with Turkey, and they're taking on F-16s, aren't they? And I don't know about F-35s going forward, but that was with regard to Sweden's accession to NATO. So it's just a super important player, and Zelensky knows that, and Zelensky is doing obviously all he can to keep them on side. Building ships is a pretty good way of keeping Turkey in the Ukrainians' kind of not sphere of influence, but having sympathies for Ukraine. But anyway, we also need Turkey's help in releasing our prisoners of war and all our people, including Crimean Tatars, who are in Russian captivity, said Zelensky. And here now today, so that was yesterday, today Turkey and the US held negotiations. The war in Ukraine was among the topics discussed. I mean, this is, as we heard from John Kirby the other day, the US is still massively involved in helping Ukraine, outside of can they get that aid package through or not. Well, if we can't get that aid package through, what the hell can we do that we don't need permission from Congress to do? Let's have meetings, let's twist arms, let's say we're not going to sell you F-35s, let's say we're not going to sell you F-16s until X and Y. Let's go to Greece and get a load of Greek Soviet era equipment across to Ukraine by saying, well, you can't do that, we won't sell you F-35s until you do that. And let's say you've got to adhere to the sanctions, India and Turkey, and if you don't, we're going to do X, Y and Z. The US are massively important still, even though they can't get that aid package through, which is itself hugely yes, controversial and hugely important. A Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan held talks with US Secretary of State Antony Blinken. I've got a lot of time for Blinken, and National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. Less time for him. The topics included Russia's war against Ukraine, Syria, Gaza, defense, energy, and the fight against terrorism. So important stuff taking place, no doubt. So Zelensky then says Putin is in full control of the security bloc and army of Belarus. Quote, Kremlin committed a diplomatic occupation of Belarus. Putin does such things either by force or arms or politically. What he did in Belarus was without casualties and without blood, he said. And that is incredibly typical for Russia, who goes around particular countries fomenting discord either through information warfare, and does that indeed into America, into Europe, deep into Europe, but also very physically involved with, well, traditionally with Armenia, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, all these places around the Caucasus and Eurasia, but also Moldova, Transnistria, Gagauzia, these places that they are trying to annex from Moldova, and they do that often, as mentioned here, without casualties and without blood. Now, places like Georgia and Chechnya. They do that with a loss of blood, but there's so much they do just with information warfare, etc., etc. Right. South Korea, Canada, Sweden have urged their citizens to urgently leave Russia because of possible terrorist attacks. This follows on the coattails of the US and Germany saying the same. So there are things going on in Russia, and I believe that the security services in Russia have kind of upped their sense of readiness as well. Now, this is unbelievable that a NATO ally, Slovakia, has said that Russia, quote, is not the aggressor in a war against Ukraine. It's just blows my mind that any sane human being can actually say that. You can't believe that Russia are not the aggressor unless you are so far gone or you are so cynical and exploitative and opportunistic. And I don't know which one it is here, but Andrei Danko, who's a coalition leader in one of the coalition parties in Slovakia, bear in mind that Robert Fico, supposedly centre-left, but has incredibly right-wing populist and growing, increasingly so, right-wing populist agenda, who's also gone into coalition with an overt, like, far-right party called the People's Party. And the leader of that People's Party, Andrei Danko, has said this about Russia, but being not the aggressor. Part of the governing coalition reckons the Kremlin is just, quote, protecting its interest. Well, that's all right then. You can protect your interests and just go into aggressor mode and, oh my goodness, that almost a try, aggressor mode and do what you like to a sovereign nation. It's fine. It pretty much disgusts me, that. My goodness, Italy have got their tails up and have scored and are winning. This is brilliant. Okay, so you don't need to know that, but I'm telling you nonetheless. Right, let's move on to, okay. I know some of you hate me talking about Trump, but you have to, in terms of geopolitics and in terms of the notion that he's very potentially going to be the next president of the US and most important man in the world. Okay, so if you remember from Trump's tenure, his 2016 to 2020 presidency, he was going to ban TikTok, and it was all highly controversial. And there are these security issues with TikTok. I wasn't ambivalent, I just didn't know enough about it. So I never commented on that move. And I still really don't know enough about it. What's really interesting now is that the Biden administration are trying to do the same thing. So what I assume is that there's genuinely some concerns to do with Chinese influence within the US and in the information space, but also, I mean, that stuff about cranes the other day. I can tell you that a whole bunch of drones sent to the United 24 have bought, I think 40,000 drones, have got faulty chips on them that have come from China, and the chips have been drilled through. That is incredibly controversial. More on that from Greg Terry soon, because he's trying to get the chips to solve that. But yeah, so China are a problem. Now, as Chris Owicki says here, a reminder that for Trump, everything is transactional and considered only in the context of his personal benefits. And this is absolutely true. Right. What's happened? Well, according to Politico, a Politico journalist, about a week ago, Trump patched things up with Jeff Yass, a major Club for Growth donor and a TikTok investor. So this is a guy that is giving a shed load of money to the Republican Party and to Trump, and also is a major TikTok investor to their parent company. Then yesterday, with no warning, Trump came out in favor of a continued PRC, so continued Chinese ownership of TikTok. So Trump's flip-flop on TikTok is beyond stunning. None of the underlying issues have changed. The biggest difference between the executive order and the legislation is that the EO was written amateurishly, thus proved unenforceable, and the bill has a better chance of having an impact. So Yass is a big donor to normal conservative causes like banning abortion, school vouchers, and low taxes on rich people, but he's also the primary US pro-TikTok funder due to his direct personal stake. Okay, so here we have three theories to explain Trump's TikTok flip-flop. And one of those theories is what caused his change of mind. Some reasonable people are putting two and two together, noting that Trump recently met with a billionaire investor, Jeff Yass, who is both an investor in TikTok's parent company, ByteDance, and a big Republican backer, in part via the Club for Growth lobbying group. This is, you know, I hate that I played you clips of some Trump voters who were saying Zelensky's corrupt. I'm on the side of Putin. You know, Ukraine is corrupt. And then here we have Republican Party getting donations from Yas and the Club for Growth, and then suddenly changing their views on. I mean, this is lobbying. It's just over almost legalized corruption, as I've written many times before. So he's a big Republican backer, in part via Club for Growth lobbying group. Yas and the Club for Growth have fought with Trump in the past, but that's all over now. Trump said last week, so Trump has announced this, that Yas was fantastic. Why would he suddenly say Yas is fantastic? Why would he say a Republican donor and a donor to Trump is suddenly fantastic? Oh, because he's a donor. Of course, he's just paid. This is bribery. And Trump and the Club for Growth were back in love. We're deeply in love, he said. Money talks. That's a cynical argument, right? Surely Trump could change his mind for reasons other than money. And actually, there are some other reasons as well, but none of them are particularly good, right? So I just want to. I know a lot of you are massive fans of this guy, but do you know what goes on? Like, can you not see that at some point he's not a good guy? Like, at some point he may be just doing things for his own benefit. Where's his national security ideology now? And then you have his lapdog, Vivek Ramaswamy, and as Phillips O'Brien, who nails it. Phillips O'Brien's totally right. Hysterical. The Trumpite lie that they wanted to get tough on China is disintegrating. Trump loves President Xi, and the family makes money. His family make money off of China. Trump will be as tough on China as he is on Russia. The amazing thing is that Trumpites will change on a dime to back him. So Vivek Ramaswamy, when he was going for in those presidential debates, was all about being tough on China. We don't need to be tough on Ukraine. We need to be tough on China. And what's he said now that Trump's gone and said what he said last week? And what's he said now that Yas has said, done what he's done in giving money? Oh, bashing TikTok is easy, says Vivek Ramaswamy directly. This is what he says. Understanding the actual issue is harder. President Trump just came out opposing the pending legislation. Here's why that's right. We need an end to end all forced data transfers to the CCP, regardless of ownership. And it's just some like rambling twaddle because Trump has said something and he has to agree with Trump because he wants to be Trump's VP or he wants to be Trump's love child or something. I don't know quite what he wants. But it's just, this is, when you have people that will happily make decisions against the national security interests of your nation on the basis of transactional monetary gain, you are compromised. You are freaking compromised. That man and this man are freaking compromised. And if you don't get that, you are a cult member. It's that simple. And I can call you out by name on my threads. I know who you are. But I want some honesty. Like, is this cool? Are you just going to go, are you going to change your opinion of that Trump position previously on account of what? Does the rationale really work, or are you going to understand it's all just like stroking the hand that feeds you? Right, and this leads on to why I'm so angry today. I get angry too often. I'm really angry with this because, again, if you like this guy, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? Donald Trump hosted Viktor Orban at his Mar-a-Lago residence. No one else. Viktor Orban. He didn't host any European democratic leader that stands for, like, you know, good democratic values. He didn't host the Australian Prime Minister. He didn't host Japanese Prime Minister, South Korean. He didn't go over anyone else. He goes to Viktor Orban, who's deeply involved with CPAC, who gets money directly from Russia, and whose disinformation campaigns end up basically supporting the work of the Heritage Foundation and Tucker Carlson by extension, right? That's who he has. Now, quote, "We need leaders in the world who are respected and can bring peace. He is one of them. Come back and bring us peace, Mr. President," Viktor Orban wrote on Twitter this morning. It's just obsequious nonsense. Trump said Orban is not controversial because he says this is how it will be. So hang on, what's the logic here? If you say this is how it will be, if you're just asserting stuff, you can't be controversial. It's just abject nonsense. And that's the end of it. He's the boss. No, he's a great leader, a fantastic leader. If you say that Orban is a fantastic leader, you are wrong. You are the wrong leader yourself. You have got your evaluation of democracy completely warped. Just watch this. I stand for Ukraine and I stand for democracy. And I don't stand for authoritarian leaders schmoozing their way into Trump's sphere of influence by flattering Trump and giving out bunches of flowers. And
we kept in touch. There's nobody that's better, smarter, or a better leader than Viktor Orban. He's fantastic. As you know, the Prime Minister.
Nobody's better, smarter, better leader, fantastic. And he gets the round of applause. Do these people know what Viktor Orban is like?
Hungry and does a great job. He's a non-controversial figure because he said this is the way it's going to be, and that's the end of it, right?
If that doesn't tell you Trump wants to be a dictator, this is the end of it and that's how it's going to be. We're not like, should we put this to the vote? Should we see what the people want? I represent the people. Let's wonder what the people of my country want. No, this is how it's going to be and that's the end of it and that's what makes a great leader. If you don't understand that this man on the screen now, Donald Trump, is a wannabe dictator, if you don't understand that he is anti-democratic, then you need to sort your brain out.
The boss. And you know, he's a great leader, fantastic leader in Europe and all over the world. They respect him. It's an honor to have you.
They don't respect him all over the world and in Europe. They despise him in Europe, apart from if you're a right-wing nationalist authoritarian party.
With us, Victor. Very great honor. Thank
you. I hate that people are clapping that. Anyway, sorry, I am genuinely angry about that. And we're going to stay on American politics. We're going to go back to the State of the Union speech that Biden made, and we're going to talk about Ukraine and how I talked yesterday about how he started with that. I thought it was an interesting thing, and I've seen a number of analyses on this about how he started wide and then focused in on like attacks on democracy internationally, nationally, and then sort of focusing in, but also getting something that both the Republicans in general, not MAGA Republicans, but Republicans in general and Democrats agree on, which is Russia are the bad guys, Putin is a bad guy, Ukraine has been attacked. We need to support Ukraine. And and I think it was really clever for him to start like that. This is Jessica Tarlov. If you don't know Jessica Tarlov, she is a legend. She is on Fox News and she is on The Five, where it's her against four people that just berate her the whole time. They pounce on her and every day she beats them, hands down, just wipes the floor with them. I know Janine Pirro is just like, easy pickings, but like she does an insanely good job and she comes prepared and she just hits them with facts and it's just every day she demolishes them. She's going on maternity leave soon, and that's so sad, but nonetheless, this is her doing what she does best.
The most important thing that happened last night refers to you saying is amped up. We're now talking about Joe Biden as too fiery, right?
And sorry, you need to know the context. The context here is that they're trying to criticize Joe Biden's speech. And so people like Sean Hannity have said, he was too angry and he was too fired up. Yet the day before, they were saying he's too doddery, he can't do a speech, he doesn't know where his pants are. Like, and then as soon as he blasts those expectations out the water, they have to criticise that. And it's like heads I win, tails you lose. It's just so frustrating, and she calls that out.
I think the most important thing that happened last night refers to you saying is amped up. We're now talking about Joe Biden as too fiery, right? As too aggressive. And yesterday we were talking about Joe Biden can't find his pants. Joe Biden has dementia. Joe Biden is too old for this job. And that's how I know that it went really well, because the Republicans who have been on TV, the congressmen, senators, et cetera, people who would use the age attack are now basically saying he's an aggressive partisan who's maybe the Coke was his, maybe it's just Adderall.
That was my joke.
Well, you didn't tell me in the green room.
No, that's
we're
what I
like
said.
the same.
Yes.
Oh, okay. And you also know that it went well because last night Joe Biden's campaign smashed 3 fundraising records at 9 o'clock, at 10 o'clock, and at 11 o'clock. And CNN did a poll of State of the Union watchers. 64% had a positive view of it. 62% said that Biden's policies will move the U.S. in a positive direction. And that's something that he was really struggling with. Trump was way ahead on that. That was up 17 points from before the speech began. Starting with Ukraine also surprised me, and it felt as if he probably wanted to start with talking about attacks on democracy at home, and they thought, let's contextualize this more broadly, right, to talk about democracies that are under attack and also to put Republicans on the back foot. You saw Mike Johnson, who was really struggling with his facial expressions and what is it I do with my hands. He wants the money for Ukraine. The rest of his caucus is not letting him do that. So I think that's...
It's such an interesting observation because A, that's exactly why I said yesterday, but B, she just agrees that Mike Johnson in his heart of hearts knows what the right thing to do is. And it's his caucus. He just can't do it because he would lose his seat. And he's under that much pressure from others.
Where that came from. But they clearly are paying attention to their internal polling and the conversations that Americans are having about how important the everyday bread and butter issues are.
Okay, and then it goes on to other stuff. But I thought that was an interesting analysis from Jessica Tarlov, and she's just absolutely brilliant. Right, Latvian Prime Minister. And then this is how to do like European politics and how to do politics concerning Putin and Russia and Ukraine. Let's not praise Orban. Let's not be someone who says you can solve it in 24 hours by effectively giving Putin whatever he wants. Latvian Prime Minister here, Evika Salinas, has compared Russia to an unpredictable alcoholic or drug addicted neighbour. She warned that countries that are Russia's neighbours should be clearly aware of this. Quote, we live next to a neighbour who you could say is an alcoholic or an addict whose actions we cannot predict. We must be aware that we live next to Russia, Belarus. We have built a land border with Belarus. We are currently building a border with Russia as well. We are strengthening the military capabilities of our border. We are following a clear plan. She also appealed to the people who live in their bubbles and their realities, not realising what danger Moscow actually possesses. Or poses, sorry. And those people, you could argue, are there. Those people need to listen to her. And then, you know, whatever victory takes, then you've got the French meeting with the Baltic states and Ukraine. And you've got Gabrielis Landsbergis from Lithuania saying we need to do much more, much faster. Today, my fellow foreign ministers from the Baltic states, France and Ukraine met in Lithuania to discuss how, whatever victory takes. We've got a clear conversation now being echoed around Europe about victory, not about winning it for as long as it takes, about victory. What does victory look like? And I think that is incredibly significant, right? Quote, Russia should not tell us how we should help Ukraine in the coming months or years. It is not Russia that should determine how we organise our actions or set red lines. So we decide this among ourselves. As a French Foreign Minister Sojourn, and I think that's, as I said earlier today, that's really important. We set the red lines, not Russia. We are not dancing to Russia's tunes. He has repeatedly mentioned the possibility of mine clearance operations, saying that this, quote, may mean some personnel available, but not for combat operations. Again, referring back to whether Western troops or personnel end up in Ukraine. Now, this is mind-blowing. Armenia is discussing the idea of membership to the European Union. Quote, taking into account all the challenges we have faced during the last 3 or 4 years, the existing new opportunities are being actively discussed in Armenia. I won't reveal a secret if I say the idea of EU membership is also in this row. Wow. How those nations are previously firmly in the sphere of influence of Russia are changing, are starting to move away from Russia's influence. Polish protesters are temporarily to unblock traffic at one of the border crossings, and there's a good couple of thousand trucks that are on that border crossing. Polish protesters on the border with Ukraine plan to temporarily unblock traffic at the Korzowa-Krakowec, something like that, crossing. Andrei Demchenko, spokesperson of the State Border Guard Services, said on the 9th, so today. And then finally, breaking news here, 2 serving ministers. This is from the UK. In all honesty, it might not be of great importance or interest to all of you, but I think this is reflective of where we are at internationally. Now, other countries have already done this, but for Britain's been a bit slow here, and we're not necessarily putting the money where the mouth is. But we have 2 serving ministers who have broken cover to urge Rishi Sunak's government to lead the way and increase defence spending to at least 2.5% of GDP at a time of growing threats. In a highly unusual intervention, Anne-Marie Trevelyan, a Foreign Office Minister and former Defence Minister, and Tom Tugendhat, he's a Security Minister and an experienced soldier, and Tom Tugendhat was running for Prime Minister against Rishi Sunak, and he's a former, as it says, soldier here and knows his defence, published an article online that does not appear to have been sanctioned by Downing Street. Quote, "It's clear to us that the UK needs to lead the way in increasing our own domestic defence and security spending commitments to 2.5% and beyond," the 2 ministers, who both with deep knowledge of defence and security, wrote. I think that's very important because, A, they've kind of moved out of being, saying that with permission from the government. They are basically pressing on the government to do that. As Deborah Haynes here says, the alarm call comes amid growing disquiet among Conservative MPs and military insiders at a failure by Chancellor Jeremy Hunt to announce new funding for the armed forces in the spring budget, even though the Defence Secretary was warned the UK is in a pre-war world. Instead, Jeremy Hunt just reiterated a vague pledge to increase defence spending to 2.5% of national income, from just over 2% at present, as soon as economic conditions allow. Of course, that's punting it to the long grass. And 2.5% is a big change, right? That's a massive increase of 25%. So that is huge. But there's, if you don't put a time frame on that, then it's meaningless. Underlining their focus, these 2 urge the government to strengthen the UK's nuclear deterrent, regrow the Royal Navy, invest in more weapons and ammunition, and accelerate plans to build a new generation of fighter jets in the Air Force. I also stressed the need to invest in the UK's defence industrial base, 100%. None of this is wasted cash. It's investment in our own economy. And this is the argument for the US providing aid to Ukraine. It's investing in your own economy to then provide obsolete stuff to Ukraine, by and large. And it protects our own future economic security, the ministers said. The sad truth is that the world is no longer benign. Protecting ourselves requires investment, and effective investment means that our industrial complex must grow and strengthen at much greater pace than at present. We cannot turn to on the complex platforms and weapons which ensure military advantage overnight. We must start the growth now, invest at pace to support our allies and stay ahead of our adversaries. Now, I spoke to you weeks past about how you've got to look at defence as an insurance policy. The better your insurance policy, the better your coverage is when you need to draw on that insurance policy, when you need to make a claim. So if I'm I'm driving a car and I get a really crappy insurance policy, or I even don't have an insurance policy. When I have a crash, I'm screwed. Or when I have a crash, I draw on my really cheap, crappy insurance policy that has an excess that's £1,000. I'm like, I've dented my car. But my excess is £1,000, and actually it's going to cost me £500 to fix a car. So actually there's no point drawing that insurance policy. It's a bit crappy, and now I'm screwed. I have £500 out of pocket. Or like, I have a massive crash and lots of people die. I'm like, I really need that insurance policy now, and actually the third party liability on it is not good, and I'm out of pocket and I'm screwed over. Well, defence spending is very much like that. Which is, right, if the better my insurance policy, the better my investment in my own defence is, that is, I'm not using it. Like, I'm not at war every year. So I'm not drawing on my insurance policy every year. But, I need that to be a good policy so that when I do need to draw on it, it's there for me. So I do need to invest in my defence so that, 5-10 years down the line, when we are at war, or when an ally is at war that is very close to us and has an impact on us, we are in a good place in 5 or 10 years time that our armed forces can do do the business to support us or to support our allies in a time of need. So that's that. Anyway, let me know what you think about that. Please like, subscribe, and share. Really appreciate your support. Take care. Speak soon.